And I just want to take a few minutes and show you some of the do's and don'ts of making a slide presentation. Again, in this course, this is not a graded element of our class, but it definitely is an element that you are to introduce yourself with and to practice for your presentation. All right, so I'm wanting to give you these kind of do's and don'ts very quickly, just to help you set yourself up for success. All right, first up, what I've done is I've pulled actual real life PowerPoint slides from Google search. And for Google search, I simply searched, what does a PowerPoint presentation look like? And I've pulled some good ones and some not so good ones. So let's just walk through these together. This first one, immediately what catches your eye? More than likely, it is that horrible highlighter green. So what we have here is a problem with contrast. We have this terrible color green that probably hurts your head, hurts your eyes, and maybe even makes your stomach a little off. But what it's doing is it's not contrasting well with the text colors or the graphic colors. So you can't see where my mouse is. Hopefully you can see my mouse. But where under this elephant logo, it says Evernote. That is very hard to read. But even when we go over here to the reds look like they're bleeding into that green. That's because the contrast is so awful. You want to stick with simple colors. The best contrast you can have, the most simple that you can have that's always successful, is a white background, black text. Now, you're not required to keep it that simple, but I'm telling you right now, that is always the preferred option for your slide and for your contrast. This one gets a big X for being a no. This is a don't. All right, next up, we have a slide that is, hopefully you're recognizing it as super overcrowded. We do not want to create slides that have so much information on them that there was no point for us to actually present, because that's not the point of a slide. That's not the point of the PowerPoint presentation. The presentation is merely there to support you. You are the presentation. So the majority of that content needs to come from you as you speak. So on this slide, what we have a problem with is too much text, first off. And you can see that the creator wanted to actually highlight some text, so they made them bigger. But then at the bottom, they had to just keep putting more text in, so they had to make it super small. It's physically not able to be read, at least not easily. Now, we also have the concern with the graphics. First up, those scissors. They are right behind the text, and so it makes the text hard to read. And we also, piecing these graphics together, have no idea what the point of the scissors are. Now, if you go over to the top right corner, there's this like square sticker graphic. Depending on how you look at this picture, you may see something different. You could see a computer with a mouse. You may even see a blood pressure cuff and a monitor. That's not okay. That means this graphic is unclear. And besides it not having a clear purpose to the slide, the graphic itself is not easily understood. And all those colors, they don't help. And they also don't help with contrast. All right, and then the graphic below that is a good old-fashioned 1997 piece of clip art. So I'm telling you right now, don't use clip art unless you have a very specific purpose to do so. Clip art looks juvenile and not professional. This one gets a big X. This slide is a big don't. All right, next we have a slide that does have an image and it's got text, different fonts. What do you see that's not so great? Well, I'm hoping your eyes immediately were drawn to the word scissors and the words first class lever. That font is very unprofessional, very outdated. You do not need shadows. You do not need to do any kind of creative art to your fonts. Just keep it simple. If you compare it to the font in the middle of the slide where it says it's used to cut things with less effort, well, that font is very easy to read, even with a not so great background behind it. That's because it's easy, it's simple, and it's clean. Now, if you're looking at those words themselves, this still probably was not the most worded or best worded text to put on the slide, and it's because of the use of it. By saying it's used, well, for one thing, that's incorrect grammatically, but it also is extremely vague. And the great thing about slides is you don't have to write in a complete sentence. So simply putting used to cut things with less effort, that's okay. As long as it was bulleted or listed in some fashion like that, we would understand that it was discussing scissors. Now, over here with the image, this image is used very purposefully, and we can see that. We can see that there's different pieces of the scissor being identified. That's great. That's a good use of an image. What's not great, though, is that there's blue text on blue background. Not good. What's weird, in my opinion, is that the scissors are on a white background. So why not just make the whole thing a white background? And then all that concern about contrast and background and being easy to read wouldn't even be a problem. All right, this one's still good to know. You heard that sound, that little bomb going off when this slide came up. This slide has quite a few issues that are a little bit different than what we've already seen. First off, that's sound. Your slide presentations do not need sound. The only sound should be you speaking. If you have a twirl or a whirl or a siren or anything like that because you just think it's fun or quirky, well, that's great, but it's not professional. And so you need to keep it professional. Avoid the sounds. When these pictures came onto the screen, they swirled and twirled in. We don't want to do that either. You want to make it easy and simple. So if you're going to use animation, which is fine, make sure it's simply click and appear. You do not want anything twirling in or circling in or fading in and out. We just want to avoid all that. Again, we're after professional. Professional means simple and clear. The other part of this slide is the pictures themselves. First off, there's no text. So we don't understand what these pictures have in meaning. You know, are they meant to go together? Do they apply to some topic? We have no idea. There's no text to support the pictures. And in a slide, text supports the image and the image supports the text. They have to go hand in hand if you're going to use both. So we don't know what these are meaning or how they go together. And just by looking at the slide as well, it looks sloppy. These pictures are all different sizes. It looks like they're just thrown on here to make them fit. It's just overall not a good, successful page of a document. It gets the big X. All right, how about this side? What do you guys think? This one has a clear white background, minimal text. It even utilizes a bulleted list to help you identify how you're supposed to read it and where your eyes are supposed to follow. That should sound a lot like our instructions. The image is there to support the text. And that image even has the source cited, which we'll get to that later on. This one here is a great example of a slide. Remember, it is not supposed to be a script. It is not supposed to be word for word what you are presenting. The slide is merely there to support you and to help you keep going. Think of it as your personal reminders. All right, so when you all are presenting, I do want you to keep in mind the rule of 3. You write your presentation as a story. Oh, my slide messed up. Sorry, guys. I'm going to blame the computer on this one because it didn't look like this earlier. All right, so that rule of 3, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And even though your presentation or your proposal itself is not a story, you know, in the traditional sense, you are still very much building something with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Think about it. You have your main message, your introduction, your title, your table of contents. You have your middle, you have your background and all of your details. And then you have your end. That's your outcome, your action, and your wrap up. Right now, there are two slides that are often forgotten, but they are necessary for any presentation. You must have the title slide, which is what you see on the screen here. This is just an example again that I pulled. It's a nice example. And the title really just titles your presentation, and maybe it includes your names, maybe it doesn't. You get to decide that, but it's there to title and to be the starting point, to be the cover. Think of it that way. It's a cover for your presentation. Right, and then you also don't want to forget the last closing slide. Now, you may have a concluding slide that, talks about your wrap up or your outcome action, but you need to have one more slide after that that signals that your presentation is done. It could say, thank you for watching. It could say, any questions, please contact us, whatever you want that slide to say, but it needs to signal that there is nothing else after this. If you just end on a slide with points and words, then your presentation feels unfinished. Think of this slide as the back cover of a book. So you have the title slide, that's your book cover, and then you have your closing slide, that's the back cover. All right. One last thing, and it is the golden rule of all presentations, all PowerPoint presentations specifically, and that last rule is don't read off your slides. You need to be forward, you need to be facing a camera, or if you're in person, facing your audience. You use your slide merely as your support. You do not stand there and simply read it. That is not a presentation. That's just reading out loud. That's not the same thing. All right, so make sure that your presentation has a few slides to help you guys, and they are there as supportive material behind you to back you up. They are not your source material. You and your written proposal are your source materials.